This is the spot you might get uncomfortable since I'm going to turn the focus on you, and I'm going to ask you to do something that you're probably not totally comfortable with, and that is to get curious about what it might mean to be personally selfish in spots. In other words, to practice putting your own focus first. Will you do that? Will you just get curious about this piece? Because it's really important that when we love someone who suffers, it's so easy that our thought during the night, when we wake up out of bed or out of sleep, is on them. When we wake up in the morning to start our day, our first thought is on them. When we take a break to have lunch, our first thought is on them. And at supper, our first thought is on them. And then once we're trying to wind down and go to sleep, our focus again turns to them, the one in crisis, the one on fire, the one that needs help that we're working to intervene on. Hear me when I say it's really easy to focus first on the one who suffers. Over time, though, it becomes a trend, and then it becomes a routine, and then it becomes a habit. So in this moment, I'm asking you to imagine what it might be like to, in disciplined ways, to put yourself first. We're going to go way back and consider you as a little one, just starting to get going on this big blue planet. And from a value perspective, we all begin with an inherent worth and value. We each one were born without flaw, and we emerge from that starting point in this really beautiful, good spot. Hear this. We're all of us, each one, born carrying inherent worth and value. And yet, as life gets busy, and in that place where someone we love suffers so greatly, it's really hard to peel apart the concern and care and focus that we put toward them back on ourselves. I would say that focusing on ourselves in a way, focusing on that inner part of ourselves, is a spiritual practice. And so using that framework in my internal life, there's this part that's not skin or bones or teeth. And no matter what I've done or seen or lived through, I have inherent worth and value. And in that way, I deserve to put myself first in ways so that I can take care of myself in better ways. And what is true is that in order to survive, we have different parts of ourselves that we deal with in life situations. I know that. And even that part of us that focuses on the one who suffers in moments need that attention. If they were literally in a burning house, we would do our best to get in there and pull them out. But over time, when we languish in the focus directed on others who are sick and suffering, and they're not getting help, which is often the case when I'm working with a family to do an intervention, you get really fatigued, and we run out of gas. And so when that happens, we can't do what we're supposed to do, which is to drive, get places, do things, live our lives. And these parts that focus on others have managed to keep us from feeling discomfort, feelings of shame and guilt about not helping them. And so when we think of helping the one we love, I want you to put something just before that, and that is start to think about how to help yourself. In the life of a family where there's someone who's sick and suffering with addiction or chronic mental illness or an eating disorder, they've been often diagnosed with something, or at least we have a good idea of what ails them. Though when I was a kid, believe it or not, I remember seeing an abnormal psychology book on my dad's shelf, and it had all sorts of maladies that were just short of possession. I remember the textbook. It was written in the 1960s. And so while it didn't directly talk about exorcism, there was still this belief that the sins of the father inhabited the son, that there was some trickle down theory from a spiritual place where there was this connection other than just being an organic connection to the history of mental health in the life of a family. And so it's important that we commit to helping the one we love, yes, but it's also important that we push some of our preconceived notions about what's going on, how they got there, out of the way so that we can not only take care of them, but take care of ourselves better. In this way, I invite you to step back and view yourself from your own needs perspective. What do you need? What might you be open to changing just as we seek to support our loved one in getting better? Are you well rested? Are you hydrated? Are you sleeping 8 hours a night? Are you exercising? Are you eating well? And that means in a way that nourishes you and strengthens you and fuels you. Are you meditating, journaling? Do you have some sort of spiritual practice? And again, my use of the word spiritual is, that inside part of us that is not body, bones, and teeth. These are all things we think of, at least I think of when I think about living a healthy lifestyle and putting my self-care first. And I want that to live on your list of priorities too. So let's just do a needs assessment together and see how you're doing, where you can bolster this daily routine. I want you to just close your eyes and observe your life, a day in the life, and think about that for a few minutes. Pause this video and maybe even jot some notes down. What is a day in the life of you look like? What does it feel like? What are the chunks of it? What are the feelings, emotions of it? What are some of the trends of it? And so then as we unpause or push the play button, maybe you ask yourself some of these questions. How did I eat today? How much coffee did I drink today? Was there green tea? Was it all coffee? Was it decaf? Am I hydrated? You may ask yourself in that inventory of the day, a normal day in your life, how was my sleep? Did I meditate before sleeping? Is there a part of my day that I look back on the day and inventory and say, hey, what do I need to, is there anything that I need to clean up before I go to sleep? I don't mean clean up like the counter or the kitchen, but maybe that too. But I mean, did we make a mess in our lives that we want to clean up so that we can wake up tomorrow with a clear conscience and start the day in good shape? Just looking at the numbers, how long did I sleep? Did you get 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours? What was that sleep like? Did you sleep clear through? You may have asked yourself and considered, did I exercise? Did I walk? Did I do anything to stimulate blood circulation and get my heart rate up a little? Or did I sit at a desk all day and forget to stretch and move? These are just pieces of inventory that you can do when you take a needs assessment on how healthy your self routine is day in, day out. And remember, in this discussion, I just want us to consider how we can have more good, less bad in our life, done through incremental changes often. In our life of our loved one, we're asking for big changes, but in our own lives, where we often have a better sense of both self-care and self, even if we're not taking care of ourselves because we're focused on somebody else, it's good to ask these questions and start this inventory, because it's a way that you can put yourself with a pen and paper and then make recommendations based on what you see, what you write down. Where are you stuck? Where do you want to have more good, less bad? And while these might feel like heavy questions as you prepare for an intervention, they're really useful questions, because when your loved one says yes, then what do? Then you're left with yourself. And often from family members, I hear after the intervention, oh my God, we slept for the first time clear through while they were in treatment. And you'll get a few nights like that. And then reality will set in, like, oh my God, are they going to be okay when they get out? The good news is that you don't have to solve these mysteries all at once. You don't have to take this roadmap or inventory and try to change everything. I'm just talking about looking at things so that you can have a more manageable basis with physical, emotional, and spiritual parts of yourself to have more good in your life. Sometimes with the physical part, that means getting a physical, literally a physical with a doctor. How long has it been since you've done that? How's the mileage on your body looking? Do you smoke? Do you overeat? What sorts of medications do you take that might be replaced by better health? Are you moving in meaningful ways each day? Have you had a cardiac event? Are you one of those 90% of people that have a cardiac event and then are not able to make lifestyle changes to meaningfully mitigate future cardiac events? Are you keeping your heart healthy? Are you breathing with purpose every day? And what areas of the physical self do you want to change? What areas of your physical self do you need to change? On the emotional front, you can also do that inventory with your emotional health. Would you call yourself a happy person? Or do you find things in your life that make you happy? And then how do you define happiness? Do you often get sad? Do you rebound from sad spells? Do you get nervous or feel anxiety on a regular basis? You know, I'm almost 20 years in recovery from alcohol and drugs. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I found that the anxiety of it, running a trauma center, which is the other part of my life in California, a subacute residential trauma center, that was super hard during the pandemic. And I found I got styes on my eyes. I had 3 styes. And at one point, I was wearing glasses instead of contacts. And I was in the office with glasses on, and a person I work with, Kathleen Murphy, who's a very gifted trauma therapist, maybe the best in the country. She said, "Hey, do you know there's something going on with your eyes?" And I thought, oh my God, yes, I do. That's why I'm wearing glasses, partly to camouflage. It's good to ask these questions like, how am I taking care of myself? And in what ways are the outside parts of life coming out in symptoms of sickness or rundown or anxiety? In the case of the styes in my eyes, I had 3, and I just looked like a wounded soldier. So look, I do these inventories myself, and I find it's really useful in a family or an intervention team where we're prepping for an intervention. I find it's really useful because it's so easy to have focus first on our identified loved one. And in that way, it's hard to peel ourselves away, but that's what I'm asking you to do, is not forever. And in fact, just in spots, to peel yourself away and put your focus first. Now to the spiritual part of us. I want you to do an inventory on spiritual health as well, and start with, what does that mean for you? What is your definition of spiritual? What is your definition of spirit? Where is spirit? What is spirit? You know, if you were to ask my great grandma Coleman, who was an Assemblies of God pastor, what spirit was, you'd get a very specific answer. It would be something about the Trinity, the God, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, and then some piece of that is the Holy Spirit, and she'd tell you how that came to be based on Scripture. And then if I were to answer it as a Quaker, it would be something much less specific and more about the inside part of me, the still small voice that asks questions and seeks guidance from the intentions of the universe. And mine has more definition to it, but I'm guarded about how I share it because I don't want to influence your thoughts, both in judgment, so you turn off, but also in ways that I want everyone's spiritual experience to be their own, not something that's crammed down their throat from a family or an interventionist. So I wear mine very loosely in terms of how I describe it to other people. But thinking more on this, what are your current spiritual beliefs? Have they evolved over time? Are they more present around the holidays, Easter, Christmas, Passover, etc.? I have a good friend, Framji Minwala, who grew up in Pakistan, and he's the first and only Zoroastrian that I've ever met. It's the oldest religion on earth. I remember learning about that in the late 80s and thinking, wow, there's so much I don't know, including the oldest religion on the planet, which I continue to be interested in as an observer and as someone who loves someone who's Zoroastrian. In your life, is there a difference between being spiritual and being religious? And if so, explain that. Which describes you best? I'm always curious what spiritual traditions from a family map are carried on in your life, like from generationally. How do things change over time. And my beliefs in spirit help make space for more good, less bad in life. And if so, how? Since I brought up my grandma Coleman, at the youngest age, she was in her 80s, I remember. But she had very specific beliefs, and we would play Scrabble, and she helped me discover my love of reading and words. And I remember she would break out in tongues, which is, if you're a person of faith or you know about this, it's a spiritual language of God channeling the voice of God through a person. And if you're not of that tradition, you think, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And if you're a little kid who doesn't know what's going on, you just think, oh, well, that's interesting. But I think it's a good question to ask, because Grandma Coleman, she was my great grandma Coleman. She was actually my mom's fifth stepmother's adoptive mother, is what she was. Actually, if you looked at the family map, that's what, on my family map, that's what it would tell. She believed that mental illness was tied to possession, demonic possession. She believed that there was a core of possession to addiction, to mental health, schizophrenia, etc. So when my mom, recalling my family map, told us as kids that our grandmother, her mother, was dead, we believed her. And when we discovered years later that she actually wasn't dead, but was in the Oregon State Mental Hospital for 50 years, great grandma Coleman's beliefs around possession and mental health really helped inform my mom around the fear and disgust and trauma around having a mom who was in the mental hospital all those years, but in her belief system, literally had a demon in hers. When we speak about things political, which I'm not going to do, or spiritual, people feel very strongly in them, or not at all. Some people break out of that and go the other way, and they have no belief, no faith. And maybe a version of the universal good is a higher power. That's what, AA and the 12-step programs try to make it sort of generic so it doesn't push people away with their definitions. I invite you to put pen to paper and do some writing and ask yourself some questions on these questions. In the Quaker tradition, there's something called Quaker queries. Query is a question to invite discussion, self-awareness, build self-awareness, provide context. And then using another metaphor, just back to inventory. In this way of taking an inventory, you're doing what every business has to do. A business that fails to take inventory will suffer and probably fail. And I think we're alike in that way. We don't build self-awareness automatically. We don't tend to focus on ourselves when we have someone who's suffering in our midst. It's easy to give them our time, attention, and energy. So it's important to stop and pause, to take stock and consider what change we might be open to ourselves, what we might consider we want as more good, less bad in life.